Appearing on Washington Watch, the Family Research Council radio show, Jeff King, president of International Christian Concern, explained that Nigeria, Africa now tops the list of the 2023 worst persecutors of countries worldwide, edging out North Korea.
While North Korea can always be number 1 or 2 on the list, we wanted to move Nigeria to the top. If you look at the last 20 years, imagine up to 100,000 Christians killed, 3.5 million farmers pushed off their lands, their land stolen. And this is all from radical Islamists. The mind bender in all this is that year after year, they come to Washington and they say, my gosh, this is such a hard problem to tackle. We're doing our best. Maybe if you sent more money or arms, we could do a better job. To scale these numbers up to the United States, imagine the last 20 years, 400,000 Christians have been murdered and 18 million people kicked out of their homes, and the government never does anything. The reason is because the Islamists are embedded in the government and they control the security organs of the state. And so that's intel, that's police, army, etc. So Washington, I think, is slowly waking up to this and saying this is actually a religious conflict. They didn't actually even see that before.
The 88-page report documenting the 2023 worst persecutors highlights the world's most oppressive countries for Christians. Between 200 and 300 million Christians live under persecution, attacks, arrests, forced conversions, denial of rights, and more, fueled by radical Islam, communist regimes, discrimination, and plain evil.
On Wednesday, the International Christian Concern Organization released its 2023 Persecutors of the Year report. It highlights the top 10 worst countries for Christian persecution. And our next guest says the issue is so underreported by the media that the average person doesn't even know it's happening. ICC President Jeff King joins us now. Jeff, thank you for this important work, for raising the awareness on this. You're right, most Christians are mostly unaware of the level of persecution around the world. Where are we with Christian persecution right now in 2023?
Well, I would say it's persistent, it's pervasive, it's proliferating, it's growing. And just as an example, I would say look to Nigeria. Hardly anybody knows Nigeria in the last 20 years, probably upwards of 100,000 Christians have been killed. 3.5 million Christian farmers lost their lands. And this is at the hands of radical Islam. And that's a lot of the story that's going on around the world that the press generally doesn't report.
Radical Islam, but we're also seeing countries like China, where talk to me about the status of the underground church in countries like Iran and China.
Well, that's probably the most exciting thing. One of the things I most like to talk about, that so often persecution breeds growth in the church. And the church in China, the church in Iran are exploding, especially in Iran. It's the fastest growing church in the world. And that's in spite of, 40 years of absolute terror, of repression, murder of the pastors and the Christians as a whole. It's an amazing story.
The fastest growing church in the world is in Iran?
That is true. And here's the other thing is the mosques are fairly empty, except for the old. The mosques are empty. Christianity has exploded, and that's all because of radical Islam and what they've done for decades.
Interesting. What can Christians do to support those persecuted? We're so fortunate to live in a country with the free exercise of religion, yet so many Christians don't have that. How can Christians help?
Yeah, well, first of all, go to persecution.org and then follow the subject matter. Get a magazine that's free, so you know what's going on. And at persecution.org, every day we're posting news about what's going on in that world. So that's the first thing. And then call legislators. We put out alerts when countries are doing terrible things, and we ask our leaders to call and make back channel calls, and that can make a world of difference. And then, of course, as Christians, we're always going to pray, but sometimes we have to turn over the tables, and that's one of the biggest things. Start shouting.
And so in Nigeria, to go back to your first example, the government there is hunting for pastors or for anybody who's openly a Christian.
Well, this is a group of, it's a tribal group. The main one is Fulanis. Everyone's also heard of Boko Haram, but the big problem is the Fulanis, and that's a tribe. But it's too complex to talk about this or that. Really, the simple story is this is radical Islam. These guys are Islamists. They're driving out the Christians. It's a massive genocide, a massive land grab. Again, hardly anybody knows or talks about it.
No doubt. Well, Jeff King, you're doing it with your organization. Thank you so much for highlighting it on our program. What's the website again if people want to check out that report?
Persecution.org. And thank you so much for having us on.
Persecution.org. God bless those Christians underground being faithful. Appreciate you.
Absolutely.